I've got a lot to say this morning. So why don't you open your Bibles with me to the book of Acts chapter 28. We're going to read 10 verses. We're going to have a little look through, see what God's got to say to us through that. And you know, the whole point is what God's got to say, right? That's what we're here to hear, what God has to say. So I'm going to do my best to share what God has to say. Let's read from Acts. I did give the passage, right? I can't remember if I gave it in this one or the earlier one, but Acts 28. If I gave it already, I hope you're there. Let's read it. After we were brought safely through, we then learned that the island was called Malta. The native people showed us unusual kindness, for they kindled a fire and welcomed us all, because it had begun to rain and was cold. Such specific detail, eh? When Paul had gathered a bunch of sticks and put them on the fire, a viper came out because of the heat and fastened on his hand. When the native people saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said to one another, "No doubt this man is a murderer. Though he has escaped from the sea, justice has not allowed him to live." He, however, shook off the creature into the fire and suffered no harm. They were waiting for him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead. Tentative crowd. But when they had waited a long time and saw no misfortune come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god. Now in the neighborhood of that place were lands belonging to the chief man of the island named Publius, who received us and entertained us hospitably for 3 days. It happened that the father of Publius lay sick with fever and dysentery. And Paul visited him and prayed, and putting his hands on him, healed him. And when this had taken place, the rest of the people on the island who had diseases also came and were cured. They also honored us greatly, and when we were about to set sail, they put on board whatever we needed. So just a little bit of quick context. Paul had heard God speak to him about going and preaching the gospel in Rome. And he was going all around the region, planting churches, seeing people saved, baptized and added, which is a well-established pattern in the book of Acts. Can I say it still exists today? The process is we get saved, we get baptized, we get added. So if you have been saved, I hope you have been baptized. And if you have been baptized, I hope you have been added. That means you are a contributing part of a whole. We don't just float around doing our own thing. Saved, baptized, and added. Now, I've lost my own train of thought already, Greg. So his goal is to get to Rome, but he gets lots of these little sidetracks. And we know because we got the beautiful privilege of reading later, that all of these little so-called sidetracks are actually just adventures in God, where he gets to go and bring God to people who need him. Then he gets on his way to Rome. And can I just say again that this is probably somewhat unlike what he thought. God told him, you're going to go to Rome. You're going to preach the gospel in Rome. I mean, when God told me, hey, you're going to South Africa, you're going to preach the gospel in South Africa, I started to form a few views and ideas of what that was going to look like. Okay, we're going to get on an aeroplane. We're going to fly. And we're going to land, because my faith isn't quite at the level yet where I can just be transported and wake up and I'm here ready to preach. Hopefully not in my pajamas, because that would not bless you. But we have ideas of what this is going to look like. I don't think Paul's conceptual ideas of what that was going to look like involved being a prisoner chained to a Roman guard aboard a prison ship. He would have had a very different idea of what traveling to Rome was going to look like. You know, maybe business class and a few nice stops at 5-star accommodations along the way. But no, it's a prison ship that gets shipwrecked in the middle of the night in a storm, and then they find themselves on land, on a place they don't even know where they are. They have no idea what's going on. And that's where we're picking their story up. And it starts by saying, after we were brought safely through. And I want to say prophetically for this church, I believe that's a key line for you guys. The last couple of years have had some challenges, right? Even if your life has been easy, congratulations. But even for churches, not being able to gather and not being able to meet and not being able to do this, and I don't know what it's been like for you guys. I know you've had some restrictions and lockdowns. We're from the state of Victoria. It's known as the lockdown capital of the world. And we essentially could not hold consecutive church services for the whole 2-year period. We were in and out of lockdowns. We could have 10 people. We could have 20 people. At one point, we were allowed 5 people in our building. 5 people. I don't know how you even conduct a church service with 5 people, even online. But anyway, we found a way. So whatever the last 2 years has looked like, I believe God is speaking over this church that you're going to be able to share some incredible God sidetracks or adventures or journeys that start with, and after we were brought safely through. Because God has, His testimony is faithfulness, and His faithfulness is our deliverance. And though there are obstacles, challenges, maybe shipwrecks, maybe snake bites, and I'm not suggesting you pray for those things or ask for those things, what I am suggesting is God can use any circumstance to let Him share Himself through us. Sometimes it's just easier through difficulty. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I'm Aussie. And for us Aussies, sometimes it takes a little hardship for us to get moving. We like to do things the easy way, the path of least resistance. That's called the Australian way, mate. The Australian culture looks for the easy way all the time. But sometimes God's way is not necessarily the easy way. And sometimes it's going not the easy way that gives us the opportunities to bring God into people's difficulties. And sometimes it's our difficulty that motivates us to get started. But after God has brought us through, I honestly believe that's a very prophetic statement for this church. So after He's brought them safely through, they realize they're on this island called Malta, which is about 80 kilometers south of Sicily, first colonized by the Phoenicians in around 1000 BC, captured by the Romans in 218 BC, but they were given the luxury of still being, although they were part of the Roman Empire, for some reason they were given the luxury of being able to still have a locally appointed leader or governor, which we'll get to shortly. It tells us that these Maltese locals showed the travelers unusual kindness. Now, there's no valid reason for that. It doesn't tell us why. But what I want to say for you guys as a church is, remember I just said, after God has brought you safely through. Now, when He brings you safely through, there is an evidence on you of God's goodness, God's kindness, God's provision, God's protection, and God's great grace and great love. And people can see that. They might not know what it is. They might not understand it. They might not even be able to explain it, put it into words, but they see it and it's attractive. They don't know what it is. Did you ever get that? Like you're in a place and people are just looking at you like, do I know you? And you're looking back going, no, you don't. Stop looking at me. This got awkward. Now it's weird. Now it's getting really hard. Sometimes those people are just looking at you, seeing the favor of God, going, what is it about this person? I don't know why, but there's something in this person that's drawing me to them. There's an attraction here I don't understand. Now, no, I'm like a beach blonde Aussie and we look awesome and we always... I'm a redhead that if I go in the sun, I look like your chairs. It's not about us, it's about God's presence in us. And He's looking for ways to speak to people, and they actually love to hear from Him. Most people don't have any issue with God. If they have an issue, it's usually with Christians, because if we're honest, sometimes Christians aren't the nicest people to be around. You guys, of course, are the exceptions, right? You're awesome. But I'm sure we all know one of those Christians. We love Jesus and we don't like being around them. You don't have any of those here, thank you. What was my point? But when people see the grace and the love of Jesus in us, it is incredibly attractive. They are drawn to it. They want to know what it is. They want to understand it. They want to receive it. They want to live in it. That's God opening doors for us to share. My wife laughs. It's often, I'll go to a service station. Is that what you call them here? Petrol station, gas store, petrol station. And I'll walk in and she'll sit in the car wondering, how long is this going to take? Because she knows I am walking in there to just pay for my petrol. Although I am going to pay for my petrol, I'm not like drive-off guy. But I'm also going to walk in there and say, in myself, I'm saying, God, is there anything you want to say to this service station attendant today? And if they see your favor on me and engage me, I'm engaging them back. And she's sat in the car sometimes. How long is this going to take today? We're actually trying to go somewhere, and I'm like, well, I'm at an appointment here. When I'm done, we'll move on. So I have learnt to go to the service station on my own. Right? It's just easier. Don't leave my wife in the car waiting. What an exciting way to live. Taking God everywhere we go. All right, so that all came out of two words, unusual kindness. So we get to be recipients of unusual kindness because people are drawn to the presence of God in us. But can I say we also get to express unusual kindness because of the grace of God in us? It's a two-way street of unusual kindness. Much better way to live than most of the world, right? So verse 3, Paul's, he's not a lazy Christian, sitting back, being served and letting everybody do everything. He's there to receive hospitality, but he gets involved and he goes out and gathers wood with them. Just wondered what you were looking at up there. And it tells us that he gathered some wood and he's carrying it into the fire. He gets it near the fire, it gets hot. And he didn't know that in the wood there was a snake. And snakes don't like the heat of a fire, although they like the heat of the sun. The fire was a little too much. So this thing, it says, fastens onto him. Now, I don't know if you're like a wildlife expert. I'm not. But I do know that snakes don't have hands. So it didn't fasten onto him with its hand. It fastened onto him with the things that do fasten, and those are teeth. Now, this snake had latched onto him with its teeth. It was biting him. And the locals have this expectation that, hey, he's going to swell up and die. It's going to be quite the show. So let's get our popcorn. Let's sit down and watch him. Wait for the swelling. Wait for the die. It's going to be awesome. Pull up a chair. Imagine being that show. It says they were obviously very patient and loved their popcorn because it says, after some time. So they're just like, what are you doing? Oh, we're just waiting for this guy to swell up and die. It's going to be great. And they watched for ages, waiting for this guy to swell up and die. And then he didn't. Now, it tells us here that when they saw him get bitten, they jumped to the conclusion, that he must be a murderer. And we can read that and go, guy just survives a shipwreck. He gets bitten by a snake. How did they come to the conclusion he must be a murderer? That seems like they're drawing a pretty long bow there. I don't really get it. But what we've got to understand is that there was Greco-Roman law at the time, folklore, taught that fugitives, get this is the orchestration of God. This is how involved God is in the little things. Because in God there are no little things. There are just things. And he can use them all. Greco-Roman folklore at the time taught that if a fugitive escaped a shipwreck only to be bitten and killed by a poisonous snake, it was because justice, which if you read your Bible there has a capital J. I was just checking that the one on the screen had a capital J. Justice was dispensing her judgment. Now, justice there is not referring to the concept or the notion of being just or justness. It's talking about the goddess justice, who is often pictured as holding scales. We've probably all seen that picture. They actually use it in the legal profession. Any lawyers here this morning? Good. Just kidding. So the concept, that the folklore that they understood was that if a fugitive escaped a shipwreck and got bitten by a snake, it was because they were a murderer and justice was dealing out her due diligence. That's some kind of spooky folklore, but yet what we see here is Paul fulfilling every point of that except the fact that he wasn't a murderer. What small things? Small things. No, just things. Speaking of small things, when I took the communion cup this morning, I picked up my cup and I realized how I was doubly blessed because I had two cups. One cup sitting inside the other and one had the juice in it. And I felt that was a stirring of God that for some of you guys, He's going to surprise you with double portion provision. You're going to take your cup, whatever your cup is, maybe for your business, eh? You're going to take a cup and go, oh, look, there's two. And I was thinking to myself, that's such a silly little illustration. And I felt God go, little illustration, you say? I gave it to you. How little is that? Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I'll share it. So, no little things, just things. Where was I going? Huh? Snake. Yeah. So Paul's fulfilling all the points of this folklore. So they go, oh, this guy must be a murderer. They sit back, watch, and he doesn't swell up and he doesn't die. So then they jump to another conclusion. He's not a murderer, he's a god. How fickle is human nature? We quickly jump to conclusions because of natural things we see with our natural eyes. We're judgmental and we're dismissing because we see things that tick boxes in our mindset. Now, their mindset was, folklore had taught them this set of circumstances was because of this. I wonder what things are in our culture that have determined if this is the set of circumstances, it's because of this. When actually God says to us, maybe that's not quite right. Everyone has a story to tell, and everybody's story is different, and we all have different series of events and things that have brought us to the place we're in right now. We can't look at anybody and go, oh, they're like that because. Or they're like that because. Or they think that because. Or I think that of them because. Because it's all the series of so-called small things that have brought them to the place where they are, and it might be completely different than we're too quick to presume. Doesn't that just show us how fickle human nature is? One minute they're saying he's a murderer, next minute they're saying he's a god. Now, in Acts 14, we see the inverse of that, where Paul and his crew came to town and they welcomed them as gods, thought they were awesome. But then very quickly they turned around and beat them and stoned them and left them for dead. Like, we're so quick to jump to often illegitimate conclusions. Now, as I started out this morning talking to this gentleman, I wish I knew your name. I'm so sorry just referring to you as this gentleman over here. But this gentleman over here, I can just look at him and see, well, a pretty good looking bloke. I mean that in the, Christian brotherly love. And see nothing. Just, cool hair, bit of a beard. Dresses nice, smart guy. But God showed me something of His perspective, which cuts across, is He a murderer or is He a God? No, God is God, and God can fill in all the little details for us if we will bother to tune in and ask. Can I say, let's not get caught up in fickle humanity, but let's look for the God perspective and opportunities in every situation. Whether it be somebody in a petrol station, in the local supermarket, the school when we're dropping the kids off. Oh, isn't that a place to meet with Jesus? The kid drop. It's like parental mayhem. Jesus can actually meet some of those people in the midst of that mayhem. But he might just want to use you as his agency for meeting them that day. Don't leave it to the experts. There are no experts. This is one of those times where I'm either completely jet lagged or I just got on one of those little sidetracks I mentioned because I have no idea where my notes are. One little free point, quickly. While we're looking out for fickle crowds and the human nature thing, just be careful. You know, those dramatic people who always use really broad, undefined terms to give really big, specific answers. Like, I can pick on anyone because I don't know anyone. So if I say words that you've used, I didn't know you used them. But you know when how you go, oh, maybe you're like Greg, you're like, Grant booked the accommodation and it's terrible and it's only like this big and there's no running water. Like, somebody asked a simple question and it turned into this dramatic exposition that fortunately led to an incredibly good relationship. And I'm sure... And I'm sure Greg's not like that. I know Greg's not like that all the time because I know him. But God set that up so that we would meet. But some people live like that all the time. Be wary of those people because they're trying to drag you into their drama. And if we get caught up in the drama, then we can miss the presence of Jesus. Instead of being an agent of the King, we can be drawn in and drawn along to being an agent of drama when God wants us to be an agent of the kingdom. Watch out. Don't get... You know the drama thing? You know, all it really shows is that people need control and that they have a lack of faith. God is in control and our faith is in him. So let's live in God's provision and protection. Verse 7 and 8, having been welcomed by the locals and proving not to be a murderer, Paul and his fellow travelers are welcomed by the chief man, this local governor man of Malta. It says that he received them and he entertained them hospitably. So received them means he invited them into his property as his personal guests. He didn't just hear about them. He didn't just know they were there. He brought them into his household, and it says he entertained them hospitably. So he took good care of them. He fed them. He made sure all their needs were met. Anything they wanted, he made it happen because he was the big guy in town. Which again, these were just guys who'd survived a shipwreck. Now here they are in the leader, the chief guy's house, getting unusual kindness showed to them. He's showing them incredible honor. And while they're staying there, and again, this is one of those small things, Paul finds out that this guy's father is sick with dysentery. Very, very interesting. So rather than just accepting that the father is sick with dysentery, which if you just think between things for a moment, this guy's name is Publius and his father has dysentery. I'm just Aussie and that's funny, all right? So rather than just leave this poor man dealing with his dysentery, and this is like serious dysentery. This was later became known as Malta fever, and they knew that it was a minimum of 4 months of sickness, but often up to 2 to 3 years of dysentery and serious sickness. But this guy didn't have to go through 2 or 3 years of sickness because he had an encounter with Jesus through the messenger called Paul. Paul brought the power of Jesus, and that man was, the word used there is translated healed, which means the power of God intervened and changed his circumstances, and he was no longer unwell with dysentery. Which if you've ever had dysentery, you crave that kind of intervention. So God does something incredible. Then it tells us that when everybody else on the island heard about what had happened, everyone else who was sick all wanted to come meet this guy. Why? Because God did something. He dealt with an issue that needed to be dealt with supernaturally through a messenger of Jesus. Word spreads very quickly when Christians live that way. We had a story shared this morning of somebody who was in your meeting last week. They walked, honestly, this is mind-blowing. They walked into your service blind, could not see. Nobody went and laid hands. They just had an encounter with Jesus. God spoke to that lady and said, open your eyes. She opened her eyes, she can see. Oh my goodness. Let's never lose sight of the never lose sight for people that lost their sight. Never lose sight of the awesomeness of God being able to do those things right here in the midst of His people gathering. But also, let's not lose sight of we can take that and exercise it everywhere we go, like Paul did. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and this is my main point this morning, even though I have 45 seconds left. I'm going to make this point in 45 seconds, give or take. At least there's not another service to ruin. It says that all the other people who came were cured. So the first guy, Publius's dysentery father, was healed. Everybody else was cured. Who wrote the book? Dr. Luke. Who was there with Paul? Dr. Luke. Dr. Luke was a physician, a medical doctor. So all these sick people are coming to Paul and Luke, and Paul is partnering with Jesus and seeing some of them healed. And Dr. Luke is working with his God-given gifting and grace to see some of them cured. Now, the word translated cured implies that it was his physicianship that led to them becoming well, whereas the word healed implies it was God's intervention that led to them being well. So what we see here is a beautiful partnership between professionals, the business world, you and whatever it is you do, partnering with the apostolic giftings of God to see a region unlocked for the glory of God. That's exactly still what God's wanting to do here in your area still today. You've got a leadership here that works in partnership globally with an apostolic team. You have incredible, honestly, sometimes we don't even know what a blessing that is. What a blessing that is. You have it. My encouragement to you this morning is whatever it is you do, whoever it is you think you are Dr. Luke. Partner with the apostolic, partner with your leaders, partner with your home group leader, your church leaders, whoever hosts the Sunday meeting, whatever opportunity you have to partner with who God has put in your life as leadership, partner with them and see your giftings and graces unlocked and released so that there can be healings and curings. Now, you might not be a doctor, you might not be able to bring physical curing, but people around here have all kinds of needs, and some of you have got all kinds of gifts, skills, talents, and abilities to see those needs met. So be Dr. Luke or be Paul, whichever it is. The point is, all of us can be one or the other. We can all partner with Jesus and see the gospel unlock our region for the glory of God. People can be healed. People can be cured. People can be saved, baptized, and added simply because we go everywhere we go looking for the God opportunities instead of just looking to get done what we went there to do. I'm not a big fan of supermarkets. I don't like going shopping. I know that's kind of strange, but I don't. When I do go into a supermarket, I go in there saying, all right, God, you put me here. I don't want to be here. Is there anything you need me to do while I'm here? Instead of just going and going, I need this bread and I need this milk and I hate being here and I don't want to be here. Because we can live our lives like that. Either option. I hate my job. I don't want to be here. I don't like that. My mortgage is too big. If I don't work, my family's in trouble. So I have to come to work. Or we can go in and say, God, you put me here. This is a place of blessing. Thank you for blessing me. How do you want to bless my workplace through my life today? We go to school or university or wherever it is we go. It's like, God, you put me here with a purpose. And I think my purpose in school is just to finish school, which I didn't do that very well, as I shared with the earlier service. I got asked not to come back to school, didn't finish. So if my purpose was to finish school, I failed. But we can think that's our purpose. No, our purpose is, what does God want you there for? Why this school? Why this place? Why this university? Why this workplace? Why now? Let God speak. And then be in tune with him and hear what he's got to say. You know, I think sometimes we think that that's for the prophet. You've got to walk with Jesus for 25 years. You've got to be really mature, and you've got to know how to stand when you pray, and you've got to know how to hold your tongue while you're listening. We make it so spiritual, and by spiritual I mean weird, because that's all that is weird. Supernaturally natural and naturally supernatural. What are you saying? Can I be the one who says it? That's all it is. Well, but what if I'm wrong? What if I was wrong? Are you in business, sir? No, I'm not. Oh, I was wrong. Then I would have done what I said, asked for some more questions. See, asking questions instead of making statements gives us a safety barrier. Is everybody listening? Is everybody okay? Is my accent so distracting that you've lost the point? Is my zip down? I like that. Everyone's just looking at me a bit weird. I'm just trying to make living supernaturally normal and natural. God is not weird. And he doesn't need us to be weird to use us. He just wants us to be listening and willing to speak. Going where we go, willing to do whatever it is that he gave us to do. Then at verse 10, and it finishes here, it says that when these guys left, the islanders expressed their gratitude by showing them great honor and filled their new ship with all the supplies they needed and all of that. And I just want to say again, expect the supernatural in incredible ways. And that double cup. You know, when we just live the way Jesus calls us to live, he's looking for opportunities to bless us. Now, a distorted version of that message says, live how you like, God wants to bless you. I want to say that's not what I'm preaching. Don't go from here and say that's what I said. What I said was, we walk in obedience and a willingness to live how Jesus calls us to live and speak the words that Jesus has called us to speak, and then he'll look for opportunities. I love that you had that message on tithing. So important. I'll just share a quick story from the first service this morning. The guy hosting said, and now we're going to take up the tithes. And I was expecting this cheer from the room. And there was just this silence, and I stood there going, oh man. Don't you long for the kind of church where we are so wildly excited about the opportunity to tithe? They're looking at me funny, Greg. Oh, I want to see a church that's excited about tithing, because tithing is obedience. And obedience brings favor and blessing and incredible God adventures and sidetracks into our journeys. I don't want to miss all the sidetracks. I don't want to just get to the point. I don't want to just pick up my groceries or pay for my petrol. I want to enjoy the sidetracks. I want to see people saved, baptized, and added, because I wasn't so focused on an earthly goal that I missed God's incredible heavenly goal for somebody else's encounter with him through me. I want to encourage us all to live that way, to be that person. Everywhere you go, God, what are you saying? What are you doing? Who do you want to speak to? What are you going to unlock here today? Just because I turned up, listening to you and willing to speak. overcoming my fears of what if I'm wrong? What if you are wrong? Who cares? If I was wrong with this guy, did he care? Did I care? I would have been a little embarrassed, but I'm Aussie. I don't care. I'm still Aussie. I still get to go home next week. Doesn't matter. Just take the risk. Wisely, ask questions. Don't make statements. Don't be weird. But enjoy the favor and the presence of God in every opportunity. Thanks, Greg. What an opportunity this has been. You guys are amazing. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being a part of our meeting today. Can I just ask two things? The first is, if today the message has in any way been useful to you, would you mind just maybe liking it or putting perhaps a statement down or a comment down that we can know how the ministry has helped you? Maybe a thumbs up, maybe you can subscribe to the channel, do whatever, just so we can know what impact this message may be having on you. And secondly, you may be someone who's saying, Greg, I hear you, and this hope that Jesus has for us can come into my heart and it can change me. But the reality is that I don't even know if I know Jesus. I want to say two things to you right away. The first is, he's near you right now. The Bible says if you believe in your heart that he is the Lord, and if you confess him with your mouth, you will be saved. Which means you just need to, where you are, turn to the Lord Jesus Christ, even now, and just say, Lord, here I am. I recognize who you are, confess my sin to you. I acknowledge you as Jesus Christ, the Lord of all, the Son of the living God. And I want to follow you. I want to become a disciple of yours. I want to give my life to you, Lord. And you can pray that prayer right now between you and the Lord. Secondly, you can get hold of us. You can see the telephone number. You can get hold of us and say, hey, I've given my life to the Lord. Can you help me from here on out? And we could either send you some material. We can put you in touch with a really good church near you. If you live in our area, you can come to us. You can follow us on YouTube. But it is good to get connected into the family of God, to get connected into a local church, that your life changes being surrounded with the family of God. Please stay in touch. God bless you.